Hey guys, I am Angela Santos, and for today's video, I will share to you the radicalism and identification theory. Have you heard of them yet? If not, just keep on watching. So now, let us focus in radicalism. At first, what is the meaning of radical? Radical means pertaining to or influencing the fundamental essence of something, extensive or true. But what is radicalism? From the word radix means root, it was a political movement and within liberalism in the late 18th century and early 19th centuries that served as a precursor to social liberalism. It's identified radicals advocated the political reform in what later became the parliamentary in the United Kingdom. The term political radicalism denotes political principles focused on altering social structures through revolutionary means and changing value systems in fundamental ways. Historically, radicalism has applied primarily to the radical left or under the single definition of far-left politics, rarely incorporating far-right politics, even though it may have revolutionary elements. The notable exception is in the United States, where some interpret radicalism to encompass both political extremes of the radical left and radical right. But what is the connection of radicalism and criminology? In criminology, there is radical criminology. It refers as critical criminology, and it is also classified as left idealism and neo-Marxist. These three approaches represents plurality of voices. These three approaches have in common. They say society as a monolith and system. So radicalism is a mixture of both Marxism and interactionism. Similar in that is it focuses on the approaches by which the state and society criminalizes certain activities or groups as criminals. The difference from labeling theory is it demands on the wider focus. It is not just interested in the interaction between the police and delinquents or the media and delinquents. It is interested in the wider process of criminalization and why it happens in relation to state and its attempt to manage capitalism. So in brief summary, radical criminology is a neo-Marxist with accept that crime and deviance are part of the social construct, but it is done with purposeful attempt to protect and manage capitalism. The theories that we have associated of radical criminology are Taylor and Young. In 1973, they outlined a new model which is a fully social theory. Within this model, they outlined 6 factors that have to be considered when discussing crime in deviance and society. First, we have to examine the wider origins of the deviant act. Crime is not just something that occurs because people are bad or evil. We must recognize that crime is linked to wealth and power disparities. We must recognize the background of an individual. So, for example, if itong society na to ay may pinaniniwalaang view, then the person will adapt kung ano yung pinaniniwalaan ng society niya or ng community niya. The second one is, we must investigate the immediate origins of the Deviance Act or the Deviant Act. Similarly, we must comprehend in the broader context. When crime is committed, we must understand their circumstances. As a result, we must investigate how and why they engage in active crime. The third one is, we must understand why the person chose to engage in a specific action. What was the actual act involved? And why did they choose why did they not choose the other choice? And why did they choose to commit? So ang sinasabi lang dito is, ano yung nag-motivate sa kanila na piliin na mag-commit ng crime at bakit hindi yung isang choice yung pinili nila? The fourth one is the immediate reaction of the criminal act. We must be able to understand why the police can act incorrectly one day but differently on the other day. We must understand that why people have such a strong reaction in a specific crime. Then, we must consider the origins of the deviant reaction. The response of the individual deviant to the societal reaction is what this means. According to radical criminology, how people want to respond to the reactions of others to their behavior is influenced by two factors. The first is the individual's structural position in the society, whether they are wealthy, poor, dominant, or more precisely, the social class. And the second is the individual's personal characteristics, whether if they are under the subculture society. And last but not the least is the sixth factor, which is the outcome of the society's reaction to the deviant. Essentially, this means whether the deviant can respond to social reactions by possibly committing more deviance. Each aspect must be considered in its entirety. It's essentially split into two parts. Understanding not only the approaches by which the deviance comes to see the deviation as a solution to an act, but also the mechanism by which the agent of social control becomes involved in the criminalization of that person. And these are the advantages and disadvantages of radical criminology. Next, let us talk about identity fusion theory. But at first, what is identity? According to Merriam-Webster's, it's an individual's distinctive personality or character. However, the meaning of the fusion is a union by. So it is like combining together or blending a thing to one another. So identity fusion is a distinct form of group alignment in which the participant feels a visceral sense of oneness with the group. This construct is based on the distinction between the personal and social selves. The personal self refers to the characteristics that distinguish a person as a unique individual. And here are the examples. The social self, on the other hand, refers to the characteristics that associate a person with groups. And here are the examples. As a result, identity fusion theory is a combination of social and personal self. When fusion happens, both the personal and social self remain visible and dominant, but their boundaries become highly permeable. So, when the social self and personal self are intertwined or combined to one another, we can still see their differences because of them being dominant. So, for example, yung personal self kasi, ito yung physical appearance natin, like tall, ganon. So, kapag pinagsama mo siya din sa social self, ang social self is kung paano tayo makipag-interact. So, pag pinagsama mo siya, makikita mo pa rin yung differences ng dalawa. In addition, people who have fused develop a strong relational ties to other members of the group, as well as ties to the community. As a result, fused individuals are not only linked to other group members, they establish a bond to other group members, like hindi lang sila nakikipagkakilala, bumubuo sila ng pagkakaibigan, nag-establish sila ng bond, ng relationship, they make relationship sa isa't isa. Identity fusion is distinguished from the other types of group identification by the power of personal self and relational ties. Allegiance to the collective outweighs the personal self and relational connections to other group members in group identification. Given the lack of participation of personal self and relational ties in identification, measures of identity fusion should be more predictive of severe pro-group than the measures of identification. Identity fusion measures are especially effective predictors of class-like personal pro-group behavior, including extreme behavior such as suffering and death. The identity fusion construct expands on previous research by highlighting elements of people's relationship with communities that were overlooked by the social identity approach. The social identity approach, on the other hand, suggests that there is a hydraulic relationship between the social and personal identities, in which increasing one's salience and decreases the influence of the other. Identity fusion theory, like social identity theory, is based on the distinction between the personal and social identities. This statement has a significant implication. As the group identity becomes more prominent and likely to guide behavior, the personal identity becomes more or less likely prominent and less likely to guide behavior. According to social identity theory, group members are only related because of their mutual allegiance. Personal relationship between the group members do not technically promote affiliated to the group. Fused people, on the other hand, feel strongly linked to each other as individuals and to the wider society as a group. So this is expressed in identity fusion measures. So for example is, I am strong because of my group. Then the other example is, I am with my group. I would do more because of my group. Then basta parang kinocommit mo yung sarili mo dun sa grupo na yon. Parang yun lang yung focus mo. Ginagawa mo lahat para sa group mo at saka para maging okay yung group mo. And that's all. And now, let us move on to the 4 principles of identity fusion theory. The first is agentic personal principle. It claims that fused people represent their both personal and social selves. In this situation, the group members could not be replaced because their personalities as well as their roles within the group are respected. The second one is the identity synergy principle. This implies that both personal and social identity should coexist. This will result in a high degree of motivation for taking group beneficial acts. These are the first people who can collaborate. Furthermore, any success would encourage them to collaborate on a personal or community level. The third one is relational ties. People who are fused, in which both of their personal and social self are both powerful, assuming that the other members of the community have them as well. As a result, they will respect the personalities and the social identities of the members of the party, and this will lead them to a stronger relationship. The fourth one is the irrevocability principle. According to irrevocability, the self will remain fused regardless of the background. The bonds that we have formed together with the other members of the community reinforce and strengthens our sense of belonging. Aside from that, even though you have so many social roles, the fusion only happens for one. This exclusivity prevents the entity from forming strong identities to other groups, allowing the fusion to remain strong. And that is all. I hope you learned something from my video. And thanks for watching. Thank you.